There's a great story of, happened a few decades ago. There was a getting together of, Buddhist teachers, and they're all at this sort of table. And there was an pile of oranges or a bowl of oranges in the middle of the table, and one of the Zen guys got the orange and threw it over to one of the Tibetan lamas who caught the orange. And the Zen guy said, "So what's that?" And in Zen, if your teacher passes you anything and says, "What's this?" if it's an orange, you damn well better not say it's an orange. Right? Right. You learn that pretty fast, you know what I mean? It's like if someone says, so who are you? And you said, "I'm Adyashanti." I mean, you better start running because you're going to get a stick to the head really fast, right? Mistaking the name of something for the reality of something. So here's a Zen guy doing what Zen guys do, flopping an orange over to a Tibetan Lama and saying, "What is it?" And the Tibetan Lama kind of looked at it, and the Zen guy's like, "What is it? What is it?" And he whispers to the person next to him, he goes, "Is there something wrong with him?" It's an orange, like, right? Right? Now they came from different spiritual cultures, didn't they? A Tibetan Buddhist comes from a very different spiritual culture than a Zen Buddhist, right? So a Tibetan Buddhist doesn't necessarily know that when you hand them something and ask them what it is, that you're actually asking them for some ultimate answer, right? If you told them, "I'm looking for a more ultimate answer than to simply call this thing an orange, here, what can you do with that?" I'm sure they would give you a very different answer. But they come from a very different spiritual context, And so if someone throws them an orange, they're not going to get all involved in, metaphysical speculation. They're just going to go, "It's an orange." I mean, big deal. If you threw Nisargadatta orange, he'd probably immediately throw it back at you, like a like a major league pitcher, He was known for a spiritual teacher who was known to throw oranges at people that didn't give him the answers he wanted. Reminds me of my third grade teacher, actually. It was chalkboard erasers in third grade, not oranges, but. So there's this thing that I find goes on out there now that we've got so much connectivity happening, at least electronic connectivity, so which means we have tremendous amounts of availability of information, right? I mean, some of you probably remember, I remember when I started all this and about 20 years old, like to find the cool spiritual books, it was like going on, a cosmic hunt, for the small thread or the needle amongst many stacks of hay all over the place. So you had to find these little obscure bookstores. You remember that? Like that nobody almost knew about. You had to have you felt like you had to have a secret handshake just to walk in because it was so different. And now you just turn on your computer, boom, 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 right? So you have information everywhere. One of the confusing things I found about that is all these descriptions of what the ultimate reality is, right? The ultimate state is like this. And then you go somewhere else and it's like, well, no, it's actually like this. And then you go to another teaching or teacher or tradition, well, it's a little bit more like this. Do you know what I mean? One of them, the world's an illusion. Don't pay any attention, just keep moving through it until you don't have to anymore. It's just an illusion, right? You go somewhere else, life is the face of God. So treat life the way you treat a God because life is a God, right? Another point of view. Which one's true? There you go. Yes. Is it this one or is it this one? Yes. Which one? I'm afraid yes to both of them. Do you know what I mean? And what they're really saying is a vast ability we have as human beings to experience things in different ways. You can experience the world as a total illusion. And I don't mean philosophically. I don't mean to make an argument for that. I just mean you can experience life as if it's some dream that you're almost surprised that you can't just put your hand through that wall because it seems like your hand will go right through the wall. And I'm sure some of you have had those kind of experiences where the world seems like a dream, like it's like a dream in the middle of the night. It's happening, but it's not really real. You can also experience the world as an expression of the divine. And in that sense, it takes on a different sense of reality. It takes on a different sense of importance, right? Sure, reality will be here even when the earth isn't, because, the one thing we can be certain of is none of us are getting out of this alive. Right? Even the earth isn't going to get out of it alive. It's going to be consumed by a thing called the sun at some point. Nothing gets out alive. Sorry to tell everybody, but... So you can see the whole world as exquisitely, extraordinarily valuable. And when you see it that way, you just see something of such exquisite beauty to it that you can't even describe why it's beautiful. It just has such an exquisite beauty. It's when the transcendent quality of life itself, life becomes transparent to its source, right? To its deeper reality. Are one of those two ways of seeing life the right way or the wrong way? You can philosophically argue forever. But when you do that, what we're forgetting is they're just different ways you can experience life. That's all it is. You can experience life this way, you can experience it that way. And 1,000 other ways. Just like on this planet, you can experience life as the way that human beings have been conditioned to experience it, as a sort of very separate thing where you're this little human being walking around in this extraordinarily vast thing called life, doing the best you can. That's one way to experience life too. Is that right or wrong? Or is it just one way that the infinite can experience itself? See, when you start to see from this other sort of, it's not even a perspective actually. What defines it is the lack of any attachment to any perspective. Then yes, you can see and experience any moment in a much greater spectrum than you started out. But in the end, the idea isn't to experience life only in one way. If we experience life as a unity, that's much vaster than experiencing life as this very separate thing that's very other than me. That's one way of experiencing. When we experience it in unity, it's totally it's very, very vast, very wide. But you see, it's a human thing to put all these value judgments on the ways we can experience the infinite reality. And as soon as we do that, we limit ourselves once again. Basically, we say, I want to experience life one particular way because it's so much more free than the way I might have formerly experienced it. But you can come into a state, I've talked to hundreds of people over all these years, you can come into a state of being. State is just a word. I don't mean to limit it to what this word state means, but you can come into a state of being, like I said, where you really feel nothing really matters. Everything's going to be okay. Everything is okay. Nothing really matters as much as you ever thought it did, which is initially a huge, massive relief. Nothing matters as much as I thought it did. Not only the stuff that I didn't think matter, but especially all the stuff I did think matter. It doesn't matter nearly as much as I think it does.